think my faith is what gets me through it. It's
Yeah.
like, God has the plan, the divine plan for me and what he's doing and how he's directing me and lifting me up to be there for other people.
Yes.
And I see it on social media.
Mhm.
It's just doing what I do. I mean, it's crazy, but I see how my life, and I share it with people, gives others hope and inspiration.
You probably know Ally Phillips as the joyful, vivacious, beautiful woman in her 70s who shares her life with all of us on social media. You may not know that Ally's life was not always the fun, glamorous life we see now. She endured many challenges growing up and maturing that have shaped her into the triumphant woman we all know and love now. And that's the part of her story that we're going to focus on in this first segment of my fun conversation with Ally Phillips. Welcome to Lessons from Living. Well, good morning, Ally. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today.
Good.
Beth, it is sunny and beautiful, and we're 6 feet above ground. That's
Amen.
good.
Well, welcome to Lessons from Living. We're delighted to have you on with us.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I've been so excited to talk to you because the more I learn about you, the more I think if we lived close to each other, I think we would be good friends.
I know we would be good friends. You can feel that energy. I think maybe that's something as we get older. We then know the litmus tests for people, and you can figure it out much quicker.
Yes, yes. I was excited to find out this week. I was watching you, and you were buying herbs and getting ready to garden and all. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I need a gardening friend. That's so cool.
And it is. And when you share these things, and I love gardening, it just makes it even, more special. And, being on social media, at least I can share it with all my little peeps there.
Yes, that is very cool. Well, you have had a busy life, Ally. And if you wouldn't
Yes.
mind, I'd like to take you back to nearly the beginning because you had some formative things happen in your life that I'm sure have impacted you throughout your life. So if that's okay, I know your mama, first of all, sounded like a powerhouse. I want to hear about
Yes.
her. Yeah. But you lost your father at 10 to suicide. And I know you said it took a long time for you to understand and forgive him. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, because I know that suicide is something that affects a lot of people, Beth,
It
and
does.
it's not easy. When you have that happen and you're so young and the whole rug, your whole foundation is pulled out from underneath you. My father was just 42, and there were 4 of us kids. Mom was a Croatian immigrant. We lived in the hollers of West Virginia. She hadn't graduated from high school. And I remember exactly the day, the time, where I was. I was in 5th grade. I remember a pound on the door. And at the elementary school, there was a little, maybe 6x6 glass peek hole in the doors to the classrooms. And I was in Mr. Hollingsworth's class. And the principal came and said, I need to have Alice cook. And you know how your heart starts beating? It's like, oh, crap. What have I done?
What I do
didn't
wrong?
anything. Yeah. And she said, your mom needs to talk to you. And, you go, oh, gee, what happened? So anyway, went and, Mom, I knew something was wrong. You're 10, And she very gently said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it just totally rocked my whole world, and it rocked hers. I mean, imagine being 37 years old, with 4 children by yourself and no family. And her parents had immigrated from Yugoslavia. And my father's family really hadn't accepted her because it was like an interracial marriage with a foreigner. And they were, English descent, Mayflower, that kind of background. So it was really hard. I have no idea, Beth, how she did it. But she said that night she got down on her knees and prayed for 2 things. One, that God would not separate her children because, you never know what social services will do and
Sure.
things like that. And number 2, that she could see us through high school. Just let me get my kids through high school. Then they can get a job. And, she hammered into us education and having skills. We weren't allowed to go into college preparatory. We had to come out with skills, typing, shorthand, bookkeeping. So it was tough. And I may have been in my early 40s. I was, it was just hard to accept. I couldn't even say the word suicide. In my teens and 20s and 30s. I said self-inflicted gunshot wound. And then, by the time I was in my mid 40s and, could talk more to mom and, better understand it, then it became easier. And at that point, of course, my background, I have a doctorate in psychology. I knew my dad had been suffering and there weren't any services for him or help, for depression and anxiety and all these things that were going on probably in his head. And his only option was to end his life. And, I and my sisters have a copy of his suicide note, and it's painful to read it, but, it is life. And it shaped me. So, and mom, I remember asking her in my 40s, how in the hell did you do it, mom? And she took a long drag off her cigarette. 2 things that got her through were her coffee and her cigarettes. She lived till she was 85 too.
Wow.
And she said, I didn't have a choice. I had to do what I had to do. You kids did not ask for this, and I had to do it. She was a young, beautiful woman. She never had a date after that. She never remarried. And she devoted herself to her kids, and we all turned out very well. Some had more problems than others, but, it was tough. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot of grit and gutsy and burn from my mom. And, sometimes I don't have patience with people who whine. It's like, it's tough, but you can do it. You have to have it up here.
Yes. Do you think that experience had anything to do with your career choice going into psychology? I just wonder, sometimes when we've had experiences like that early on, it kind of shapes future choices.
I think it probably did. Mom eventually took her GED, and the closest college was 3 hours away over hairpin mountain curves, and to get her college degree. It took her 7 years. She became a teacher. So my first undergraduate degree was in teaching with handicapped children, then a master's in orthopedic conditions. And then I went into school psychology. And I think it all just kind of blended in, came from mom, the teaching background, and other family members. So, yeah. And it has helped me so much. I mean, you hate to say that, whatever a suicide is, but I've learned so much from it. And I don't ignore signs, Beth, and with people, and when you see things, and if you see a pattern and a consistency. So, it's given me a direct insight into something that's pretty terrible.
Yeah,
And I've helped some people
I
through
bet
things
you
since
have.
then. Hmm.
I bet you have. So that's interesting that her example was also related to education. She really led by example there
Hmm.
as well. because that's something that I really admire you for. You attended Marshall University, you met and married your husband, Danny, and
Mhm.
then I had never heard of this, Allie. So, can you explain what happened and the tragedy at that school? It is just,
Mhm. It was, it is the greatest athletic air tragedy in American history. And it's the Marshall plane crash. And there's a movie about it. We Are Marshall. Matthew McConaughey stars in it. But Danny and I were both graduate students, and we were married. And Danny had been a basketball player, so he was an assistant basketball coach and a graduate student, and I was a graduate student. And so we were babysitting the 6 children of the team doctor and his wife. A lot of, supporters went on that Southern Airways jet. We played East Carolina University. And so Doc and Doc Hagley and Shirley, his wife, were going, and they were young, Beth. They were probably uh, Doc was probably maybe 38 years old. Shirley was 36, and they had 6 children, 13 down to 4. So we kept the 4 kids. Otherwise, they couldn't have gone.
yeah.
And on that Saturday night, we were watching TV, all of us lying on the floor, shag carpeting. It was the 70s. And I don't know what we were watching, but they interrupted the show and they said, "We interrupt. There's been a uh, Southern Airways jet that has gone down coming into the Huntington Airport." Huntington Airport is a mountain. And, Danny and I looked at each other. We were young. And, we knew that Marshall had flown. It was 75 people, many of the big supporters of the university, bankers, doctors, the team. One coach had decided not to return. He was going to do some recruiting in I think Valdosta, Georgia. But 15, 20 minutes after that, they interrupted the program again. And, we immediately turned on the radio. We turned the TV off and, started getting updates, crackly. It was, 70s. And we were sitting in the kitchen, and I'll never forget, there were 2 little boys and 4 girls. And we were all listening to the radio, and 2 of them were under my arms. And the announcer said, "We want to report that there are no survivors of the Southern Airways jet crash." And one of the little boys looked up to me. Maybe he was 5 years old, 6 years old. And he said, "Alice, what's it mean, no survivors?" And so we had the children until they, the arrangements were made, and it was weeks. It was horrible. I think maybe several of the players, people were never, there was nothing found of them. So there is a mass grave at Marshall. Uh, it was, it was awful. And it just, it, you lost friends. My sister was engaged to the kicker on the team. They were going to get married. She lost her fiance. It was, those are
It's
tragedies
a
that
whole
affect you for
community.
life.
Yeah.
Yes, a whole community.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And you go to funeral after funeral, and then you've got these children, and, I can't even recall all of the pain and the heartache
Uh-huh.
of that event. But yeah, you need to watch Weir Marshall. They
Okay.
show actual clips from the footage from the airlines and the video clips and things like that. I think basically the pilot misjudged the landing. It was foggy, rainy, and hit the side of a mountain.
You
So,
said you said that experience forever changed the fabric of both yours and
hmm
Danny's emotional DNA.
hmm yeah, it did because we were young. I just turned 21.
Yeah.
Danny was 23. And when you have something like that happen, it almost stuns you. It just wraps chains around you.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't talk about it.
Mm.
It was like, if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. We all needed therapy.
Oh, I'm
We did not
sure.
get therapy. Not, maybe some did, but Danny and I didn't. And I think that, really, we had to hold in. Danny had to identify, he had to go to the morgue and identify. I think the only thing they found of Doc was his billfold. And Shirley, I don't even want to say, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's traumatizing.
Yes.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It's
At
traumatizing.
a
And we were
format.
traumatized,
Yeah. At a
but we didn't
formational
know we
time.
were traumatized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know you're traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
So, now lessons from life, you look back and you go, yeah, that affected me in a way that I had no idea
Mm-hmm.
it was happening.
I'm sure.
So we made a change and we uprooted ourselves and we moved to South Carolina, Danny and I.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
And, it just kind of closed that door for us. And it was the way we dealt with it. We were
Mm-hmm.
kids.
So you had 4 sons in 5 years. You
Hmm.
deserve a medal for that one.
I was pregnant. I was pregnant from 1977 to 1976 to 1981.
I can relate to that, Allie.
Hmm. Yeah, you've had a bunch.
Yes, being pregnant for a long time.
Hmm.
And then we don't have to. You've been through a lot of tragedy. You lost your second son, another
Hmm.
huge
Hmm.
tragedy.
Hmm.
How do you overcome something like that? Did you have faith in your life at that point?
Hmm. Oh, yes, yes. You
Okay.
can't do it without faith. You cannot do it
You see
without a
people
rock.
try though. I can't understand it.
I I don't understand it either, Beth, but that's when your faith is truly tested.
Hmm.
It's You have to lean on something. I know I didn't get angry at God when I lost Michael, but it was like, why did that happen?
Sure.
He was a perfect little baby boy.
Hmm.
And it's, the kind of thing that, it was tragic. And I was 28 or 29. I was getting my doctorate, and that happened in January. And I guess, see, I was raised by the best to get through tragedy. My
Hmm.
mom. I was getting my doctorate. I had finished my dissertation, and I was, of course, pregnant during that process of finishing the dissertation and going back and forth to Columbia, South Carolina to meet with my professors and my team. And in January, I lost Michael. I defended my dissertation, the final dissertation in March.
Oh my God.
And I will remember my whole team was in there, and it's like a grueling 8 hours or so. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
they ask you every question and they try to stump you up and, all of these things. And so, I finished up all the questions and they said, okay, Alice, go out. Your dissertation team is going to meet and just, make a decision. So maybe I was out there 30 minutes. I don't remember. And the head of my dissertation committee, Dr. Menifee, he walked out and he said, congratulations, Dr. D'Antoni.
Mm.
And he says, come on in. Everybody wants to see you. And they were all congratulating me. Congratulations. And then uh, one woman said, now tell us how that new baby is.
Oh my goodness.
And they
Allie.
didn't know. That's when I just broke down and I lost it. And so, I had to muscle through it. I was so close to getting my doctorate degree. And so, I had to get through that dissertation and there's nothing worse than going to the hospital and leaving without your child.
Mm-hmm.
And, but maybe I have this way of compartmentalizing in my head,
Mm-hmm.
but mom was living and, and she was a rock. She said,
Hmm.
you've got to do this. She said, you've worked so hard.
Wow.
You will get through it. And I did.
You did.
So yeah, yeah, those are tough times, Beth. So that was, from 10 to 20, 27, 28,
Hard
so three
years.
big events. Yeah.
Yes. So after 20 years of marriage, then you decided to go separate ways after getting your education, earning your doctorate. As you pointed out, you said, I'd been raised to be resilient, tough, and resourceful. The difficulties of my childhood really helped me navigate life better. So you really see a connection between your experience and how you're able to handle adversity even today,
I,
I'm sure.
I do. I do. And I think that is that was my training ground. And I had the best coach, my mom, in the world. And I watched it every day. I watched how she did it. I mean, she didn't have time to have a pity party.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have time to feel sorry for herself. She modeled what it takes to walk on hot coals and move through fire of life. And it has helped me because, there's lots that has occurred since then
Mm-hmm.
and will continue to occur,
Right.
Beth. And I, you know, I think my faith is what gets me through it. It's
Yeah.
like, God has the plan, the divine plan for me and what he's doing and how he's directing me and lifting me up to be there for other people. And I
Yes.
see it on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing what I do. I mean, it's crazy, but I see how my life, and I share it with people,
Mm-hmm.
gives others hope and inspiration because I'm a real person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not somebody who's in a bubble in Hollywood or New York City or something. I'm just a real person. Just
Yeah.
like sharing my recipes, just like to share life.
Yes. And speaking to that adversity, I see so many parents today who try to shelter their kids and protect them from anything, any adversity. As a psychologist and a survivor of your own struggles, do you agree with that philosophy, or would you say let a child experience? I know it's hard as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
especially, to let your
Mm-hmm.
child struggle. What would be your
Well,
thoughts on that?
it's a tough world out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a tough world can be 2 blocks down the street from you. It can
Yes,
be
ma'am.
going from elementary to middle school, middle to high school. It can be getting a new job. And I believe cave in and be there to solve all the problems. Mom was behind the scenes for me. I would talk to her and she'd say, you're going to make the right decision and you're going to know what you need to do when you need to do it. And you have to be tough. At one point, I have 2 sisters and had a brother, and they had kids too. And she told me, she said, sometimes Alice, you're too hard on your boys. I was not strict, but I had these expectations, and so did Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we had these expectations, and he was their basketball coach and athletics, especially athletics where you go into competitive Division 1 competitions and things like this, or traveling teams and AAUs. You don't get there because somebody is being nice to you.
Right.
You get there because you figure out if you're good enough to be there. And if you aren't, then I'm sorry, you're not going to get the trophy or
Mm-hmm.
eat the cupcake.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that my boys learned that toughness and the strength. And I think that parents need to sometimes, they need to fall. They need to feel. the pain of disappointment, the hurt. What are you going to do about this now? How can you work your way out of it? Whether it's a poor test grade, or you got the mean girls not liking, you can't get in the circle of trust with the girls. Whatever it is, it's going to happen. And you've got to give those kids the tools to deal with it. So our 3 R's growing up were resourcefulness, resiliency, and respect. Instead of reading, writing, arithmetic, you got to be resourceful, you got to be resilient, and you got to have respect. And so we were resourceful and we were resilient, and we had respect for, just everything, we were around, and, from manners to yes, ma'am, no, sir, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't expect a handout. We didn't have as much as other kids. We were grateful for what we had. That's the real world. That's what mom taught us. And it made us tough.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes parents today don't want their kids to experience it, but you've got to let them feel what it feels like and how to deal with it.
Yeah. I love
You've
those
got
3 R's.
kids, you know that.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. That's how we raise them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you remarried at 42 to Ben and have been married 31 years. Is that right?
Uh, Actually, 32 in May.
32 years. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you guys are very well suited for each other. Tell me about him. What's he like?
Well, Ben is like me. He's a type A personality. He's always on the go doing something, very energetic and creative. He ran companies, and so he's an entrepreneur with a bigger company, than I had. But yeah, we like to do the same things. We love to travel. We love to eat. We love to dance. He loves to fish. We just have a lot of things in common that, make us very compatible. And so we blended two families, and that was very not easy. And he had two grown daughters, one married, one shortly married after we started dating. And then I had the four little boys who were like 15 down to 9.
And 14 grandchildren. Do I have that right?
Well, we have 15. We just had a second great grandchild about 6 weeks ago.
How do you keep
So,
up with 15 grandchildren?
well, if they're not on Facebook, I can't remember the birthday. And they're not on Facebook. No, we work hard at it. We try, but it gets harder and harder because each little family has become their own unit now.
Right.
And then they've got their family, and then they've got in-laws, new families, and all. So it gets harder. And that's why we're going to Montana to have Ben's hopefully 85th gathering, and everybody get together. And you have to plan it 2 to 3 years in advance and pray that everybody's still there
Right.
2 or 3 years down the road. But it's, it's been a real challenge, but we've done a really, I think, good job of it. There have been ups and downs. Nothing is perfect, but you muscle through it, and you just, you make it work, and you talk and you communicate. And gosh, I was so much more emotionally mature at 42 than I was at 20. That helped a whole lot.
Yes,
And we
definitely.
both, Ben had been in a marriage, and he had a wonderful former wife. In fact, we were good friends. It was like, I love Ann. She's great. And my former husband, Danny, loved Ben. I mean, and they, we still talk on the phone and see each other and things like that. So you have to have emotionally mature people to make something like that work.
Yeah, for sure.
You really do. And you can't get your panties in a wad, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to really just realize that what you're doing is for this family and not for you, and to put your little, whiny, petty self-interest aside, and, look at the bigger picture.
Right.
That's my mama talking. you know.
Yes, it is. Well, so you, as you indicated, you were Dr. Alice for 30, help me with these
Mhm.
years. How many, 30 years?
About 30 years, I had a private
Okay.
practice. Hmm.
And then you talk about remaking yourself in your 60s.
I did,
Tell us about
yes.
that. All right, friends, I'm going to interrupt here and tell you that you don't want to miss the rest of Ally's story that we share in the second segment. So come on back next week to hear what happens next. In the meantime, remember this nugget from Sean Anker. The most successful people see adversity not as a stumbling block, but as a stepping stone to greatness. I love you guys. Go out and make it a great day.